Chapter 12. A Drama in Nigger Neurosis. 6 Militants Among the Martians. My lovable niggers in fancy, I submit this dream and reality that you might recognize and identify the true existence and the self-deceptions among niggers about us. 6 of us, all black kind, were seated at a large rectangular table center of the spacious oval-shaped room. Despite mid-July heat outside, the big room was pleasantly cool, a certitude of some new unusual kind of air conditioner. From my chair I looked about the room, seeing no vents or openings as a source of pleasant cool air. I concluded the Martians were well ahead of us here on Earth in their hermetically sealed air conditioning, among other things. Breathing deeply, I closed my eyes and tried to relax. So much of this I wanted to remember in case I ever got out. Slowly I reopened my eyes, observed the 5 others, Nigrets, sitting around the table, all of them rigid, frightened, obviously, and uttering not a mumbling word. Over 15 minutes now they had all been here. Still no one had ventured to speak. I wondered if that Martian fellow called Martuk had warned them not to talk to me or to each other. Martuk had ushered us in about 5-minute intervals. Being first to arrive, I had been able to observe the others as they entered. Each of them followed the same identical pattern, giving me a general nod, saying nothing, and sitting. Since Martuk hadn't forbidden me to speak, I considered starting a conversation, but shrugging my shoulders with resignation, I finally abandoned the idea. I contented myself with sitting back to study the interior of the ship room. The walls, I noted, were of some kind of glossy, burnished metal, aluminum, or some other similar alloy. I wanted to get up, walk around, and feel, touch the walls, but finally I decided against it. The Martian Mortuk for certain had instructed me to remain seated. They might attempt to kill me for getting up, I told myself. Turning in my chair, I studied that part of the wall where myself and the others had entered. There was no sign of a door there, no lines, crevices, or anything to indicate where it might open. I pondered how many other invisible doors or openings there might be along those walls. Hermetically sealed rooms, I thought again, while studying the smooth walls. Martians have beat us to that also. Projecting from the wall in front of me was a platform about 3 feet high. It held a smaller table and 2 high-backed chairs. I guess these might be with the idea this might be the judgment day, and I am among the first 6 to be judged. After all, I amused to, I amused to myself. Colored folks have been singing and praying about Judgment Day for so long. Maybe God and the Martians might have decided to oblige by taking us 6 at a time to get it over with. Behind the table above us, which I imagined was for the Martian High Tribunal, a high glass light panel was fitted smoothly into the wall. Probably one of those super-duper television screens like CBS and NBC have been experimenting with, I surmised. Observing the panel closer, I considered it might be a picture frame or observation window whereby the Martians might be observing us unseen. I chuckled at the thought. The Martians are probably studying the behavior patterns of niggers. Probably got a smaller room for white folks, and they're going to make a few comparisons. Growing tired of speculating on the Martians, I turned and faced the man directly across the table from me, the Negro congressman. I recognized him, the Negro Congressional House representative, from his many pictures appearing so frequently in our colored newspapers. Two-bit-ass loudmouth, I smirked, always ensuing statements as to Negroes' conditions and what he intends to do about them, but never actually does a damn thing. I noticed the congressman was perspiring freely. Son of a bitch, sure isn't making any of his loudmouth statements now, I remarked to myself. I recall the congressman had once been minister in a big northern city church, making much noise back during the Depression era, around the time Southern Negroes migrating to his northern city like pack rats were much disappointed with the northern white man's treatment of our kind. The Congressman, then a minister, constantly reminded niggers that under the laws of God they were due better treatment up there in his north. The poor niggers, believing that in their cause God functioned better up there in the north than anywhere else, had listened and believed. And there, in the pulpit every Sunday, a man of God was telling them so. It wasn't long before riots started. Thinking about it, I smiled. I had to admit those riots had been the making of our Negro congressman. But the northern white politician is still the best there is, I mused to myself. To quell those riots and appease the niggers, these white boys had got in and elected that nigger, sent him on to Congress in Washington, then went on running the city the way they wanted and had been accustomed to. Now that they had a Negro congressman, the colored folks were happy. Their condition hadn't improved any, but they were happy just to have their nigger preacher up there in Washington hollering like hell, even if he was doing much of nothing. I remembered that I had been dismissed from one of my first college teaching jobs for pointing this out to my classes. My dismissal had some right after the congressman had journeyed to our Southern Nigger College campus and delivered one of his stirring speeches at the college president's request and a cost of $3,000 subtracted from our student funds. Our college student our college president had considered this price reasonable considering the hope it gives our students. Then there had been the little matter of a book titled The Black Solution, written by the congressman right after his election. The college president had purchased a shipment of these books wholesale, placing them on sale in our college bookstore. He directed his faculty to make the book a must-reading material to be purchased for our classes. But not complying with its president's directive, I was seeking another teaching position at the semester's end. That had been 6 years and 4 teaching jobs ago, as I now remember. As I thought of the incident, my eyes traveled up to the man sitting at the far end of the table, opposite of me. This chubby, pince-nez wearing black man was Calvin Cooter, Ph.D., only the degree was honorary rather than earned. Dr. Cooter was presiding head of Southeastern State Teachers, Agricultural, Industrial, and Business College, University for Negroes. My second dismissal from a college teaching position 5 years ago was attributed to the power and influence of Dr. Cooter. I had met Dr. Cooter while attending one of the numerous conferences on Negro education and had been stupid enough to disagree openly with a couple of points made by Dr. Cooter during conference. This was unfortunate for me. A few days after the conference, I returned to our campus and received a letter from the president of my own institution. We find your expressive views, philosophy, and attitude towards Negro education are not in accord with those of this institution. Regret having to terminate your tenure at the end of the present semester, signed President. I recalled the letter as my gaze caught eyes of Dr. Cooter. The tubby educator bowed his head. Then my attention shifted to the man at Dr. Cooter's right, Attorney Manny Seaton, Negro Champion of Minorities, National Executive Secretary of UCNCP, the Urban Core of Nonviolent Christian Peoples. Seaton had been two-time All-American in the Big Ten football conference about a dozen years ago. He had dominated headlines ever since his junior year at college with football and courtroom heroics. I remember Seaton well as Southern boy, winning a Big Ten athlete scholarship completely anti-Negro he was, until after an incident during his senior year of college which converted him. Seaton now championed the Negro cause. A couple of his white teammates had almost beaten his head off when Seaton had drunkenly assaulted a white girl who dated him after a football game. The girl had wanted to cooperate in an act of sexual integration with Seaton. There was much big stir and stink. The girl folks had wanted to prosecute. Negro newspapers defended Seaton and howled for the skins of those white boys. The coach and the school powers needed Manny Seaton for the Rose Bowl game on New Year's, so the university's powerful alumni had silenced the girl's family with money, political pressure, or both, and the whole thing was buried. Manny had been sensational in the Rose Bowl that year, but thereafter he elected to revenge himself on white people by championing the cause of Negro rights. This he had done while personally amassing a fortune of $250,000 or more from the cause of social equality. The big leather brown man sitting opposite Attorney Seaton was the Reverend Ox Kelly, another Negro leader of football vintage. The small square above my left eyebrow attested the once legendary viciousness and brutal prowess of Ox Kelly's football play. Reverend Kelly's head was now bowed in the classical manner of his calling, bellowing the savage terror he had been in Negro college football. It was the Prairie View Bowl, 1939, when I myself, then known as Jumping Jack Taylor, had joined the Society of Insensible Quarterbacks by testing the invisibility of Ox Kelly's tackle position. The ox had convinced me with a well-placed knee over my left eye. Now rubbing the scar, I recalled the rousing drunk me and Kelly had tied on after Gaines' victory dance. The ox had insisted that I, Jumping Jack Taylor, join and help him to celebrate. It had been Jumping Jack, now me, Professor Taylor, who after my injury returned to the game and sent Ox to the sidelines with a broken left hand. Ox wanted to show me where there were no hard feelings as a result. After the dance, we went white boy hunting through the streets of Houston, Texas. The ox had boarded a train the following morning with both hands in plaster casts. I still have never seen a man strike as hard as the ox had hit the poor white boy. The luckless fellow had mistakenly asked us where he could locate a little black gal for some sport. The ox had hit the poor white boy. The ox had showed him. Believe me. As a minister, the ox had made quite a name for himself through the years. Many times since the war, I had tuned in and listened to Reverend Kelly's booming voice on the radio. That voice had marshaled thousands to the cause of God and civil rights, not to mention skyrocketing the Reverend from small time and poverty into air-conditioned Cadillac class, along with abundance of free pussy, white and colored. Somehow I felt certain that Reverend Kelly would no longer like me. Once I had written the Reverend a letter after listening to one of stirring radio speeches, simply asking, "What is this thing or equality you call Negro equality? Tell me, if we are granted complete civil rights under law as a leader, will you interpret this as Negro equality?" Your old friend, Jumping Jack Taylor, Prairie View Bowl, 1939. Obviously, the letter hadn't pleased the minister, for he never bothered to answer it. Judging from the scathing look the minister was giving me now, I felt sure the Reverend now disliked, even hated me. Beside the minister sat fabulous Natalie Birch, called so by her close and personal friends. Natalie Birch was editor on and columnist the Brown Dispatch, a powerful Negro newspaper. Slander sheet is what I often called it. Natalie Birch was also referred to in social and professional circles as the Negro hitter-hopper and the Pearly Master, revered for her public treatment of other people's private affairs. Much of her time she spent in Washington, D.C., pestering politicians for interviews and reporting them to her readers from a personal angle. From her columns, the reader was led to believe that she was on a first-name basis with everybody in Washington, including the presidents. Her latest newspaper column, Devotions, had been directed at the nation's president to have herself appointed ambassador to one of the emerging independent African countries. She wants to make like Pearly Master, and I often told my class in political science. Her latest editorials on this matter were so disgusting and affected me. And now, dear readers, here her latest column had read, "Why should America have a Negro woman as an ambassador to one of our darkened nations? If Miss Master was thought competent enough to serve our nation in this capacity, then why not someone of our race for Africa? Yours truly would just love to serve her country in this capacity. Negroes will have to remember this at election time. We must remind our present executive that Mr. Truman, Mr. Eisenhower, and Mr. Kennedy were far more understanding when it came to such affairs of state. Till next week, Nellie Birch. P.S. Don't forget to write your letters addressed to me concerning this little matter which I have mentioned. Still studying the woman, I groped into my pocket, feeling for my pipe. The pocket edges were worn smooth. The fuzzy wool of the tweed had long disappeared. The suit was nearly 6 years old, but still the newest garment in my possession. Withdrawing the pipe, I placed it between my teeth and thought better of lighting it. Biting the pipe stem, stretching my legs full length, I closed my eyes again, my mind racing a staccato of thoughts, questions also, as to my personal presence here. I could easily rationalize the presence of the other five around me. They were leaders, the high llamas of Negro society, but I was not. Only a misfit instructor of Kildare College, not even head of my department there. Perhaps I'm the one on trial here. I chuckled to myself, and these other five bastards are witnesses for the prosecution. Perhaps the Martians plan to torture me because I haven't been active in supporting these darkies in their pretentious fight for Negro progress. Then maybe the Martians would like to have me expose these five hypocrites. I'll be just the boy to do it too, I thought. I wouldn't even need the slightest encouragement. A blast of cold air interrupted my reverie. I turned and saw the wall open. Murtuk and another Martian had entered, their faces black, solemn, and severe. Attorney Seaton jumped to his feet, extending a greeting hand of beginning friendship. His bulging 6'3" weight towered a good 12 inches above that of the two Martians. Please do not rise, the Martian's called. Murtuk spoke first, his voice drawn, almost a musical humming sound. I then observed that the Martian lips had not moved. I surmised that these Martians must employ some special kind of communicative apparatus to speak with us. Murtuk was droning again. My assistant Marta, he indicated the other Martian. Marta here has not had the pleasure of meeting all of you, as I have. He moved to the platform. Marta followed him. Both of them seated themselves. None of you need fear. Marta was droning this time. I thought I saw each of them smile, but it was hard to tell. The texture of their swarthy skin was lined, wrinkled, rough. Their skin was carbon black, so it was quite difficult to be certain. Their lips were thin, drawn tight, and severe, that made them appear somewhat grotesque. Here in America, I thought while observing they might be mistaken for niggers, except that their features were sharp, somewhat aquiline. In a squeeze they might have passed for native Africans of some kind, but those drawn lips were usually unnatural. Of course, Murtuk was drawn again. We at least don't have to convince the six of you as to the actuality of our ship, which I think your scientific observers commonly have named a flying saucer. Nellie Birch was sitting erect, wide-eyed as if she were hearing a fascinating lecture. She removed her glasses and tried to look charming. Seaton, the attorney, an erstwhile football hero, looking indignant, his nostrils flared, head and shoulders hunched like he was about to run through the University of California football line for the last-minute touchdown on New Year's Day. Reverend Oz Kelly, I noticed, had screwed his own face into a grimace of pity, as though he hoped to actually impress the Martians with his holiness of purpose and presence. I then glanced over to see our black congressman staring fearfully into the ceiling, as though he expected some angel or spirit to drop down and deliver him out of mercy. As my eyes darted back and forth between the Martians and the five black kind seated at a table, I was beginning to enjoy the whole spectacle. For some time now, we Martians have had your planet Earth under close surveillance. Murtuk was droning again for possible Martian occupation. Marta, the other Martian, then interrupted. But you are not to interpret our presence here and now as the invasion of any sort, though it has been necessary to abduct the six of you temporarily. Then how are we to interpret it? Attorney Seaton sounded belligerent, feigned bravado. We, Professor Marta and myself, are only specialists in research and classification. Martuk assured them pleasantly. Oh, then you have recognized and selected us here, shrilled Miss Birch, as the principal representatives of our colored peoples. She sounded, she sounded thrilled with the idea, but frowned slightly in the direction of me. You might call it just that, Marta droned. And you want information concerning our darker Americans, she continued. You are seeking to know our history, our social problems, the com- composition of our society, our racist struggle, and Marta interrupted her. Miss Birch, we probably know more about such things than you do. On Mars, our planet, we have already studied and classified most of your social organizations, your formalities, your families, your tribes, your nations, races, religions, and the like. Right now, we are primarily interested in you as organs. You mean as individuals, Attorney Seaton corrected him. We mean organs, Counselor, as I stated. Martyr droned. Things like individuals which earthlings boast of, other such things like races, society, nations, and so forth. These are only concepts, but that is understandable for you here on earth. You have just reached the conceptive stage of your development. All of you are not even infants in organistic development. If I may differ, sir, Reverend Kelly spoke for the first time, we are humans made in the image of God with a soul, a spirit, a mind. Martyr droning answer sounded almost patronizing. Reverend Kelly, we have already researched and classified the various earth theories and concepts of what you are or think yourselves to be, all of them extremely retarded and childish. Dr. Cuda joined the discussion. Well, if you want to consider us humans, what single or collective picture do you hope to get of us by ignoring the very existing structure and orders of which we are products? You will have to consider our organizations and the collective meanings from which we emerge, sir. That's correct, added Reverend Kelly. We are products of our social orders. We are not animals. We have a moral code, words of prophets. We have purpose, words of progression. And in your progress, Martyr stopped him, you seek to divide yourselves into clans, groups, religions, and finally as nations. Then as nations and races you adopt symbols, creeds, pledges, and enforce your behavior patterns on small or less powerful groups. You do this by waging war, said the other Martian, teaching bigotry, suspicion, intolerance against other groups and nations, sometimes enslaving them because they are not in complete accord with you. But we are Negroes, the congressman spoke up. That is not the story of our Negro people. There is an example, Martuk drawn. Emphatically, you call yourself a Negro, identifying yourself with a particular race group, but this was not of our own choosing, shouted Miss Birch. We have been forced to accept this. Every day black people are fighting to be accepted as plain, ordinary humans. Why? Accepted as white humans, she means. I then spoke out for the first time. Of all of the niggers turned to stare at me. An interesting observation, Professor Marta broke the silence. We have learned, however, comments like that would make you unpopular among your ethnic groups. I can see the two of you've gotten around some, I laughingly replied. Are we to understand that you Martians plan one day to invade our planet Earth? The congressman asked. Occupy is the better word, corrected Marta. Well, I'm looking at the color of your skins, the congressman almost gloated. I hope you are aware that despite what you consider yourselves to be now, here on Earth you will be considered only as Negroes or Africans. Amen, Reverend Kelly boomed. You are one of our black brothers. Ethiopia shall spread forth her wings and rule the world. The prophecy is being fulfilled. Both interpretations are erroneous. Martuk droned, a laugh for the first time, his tight lips stretched across his black face. The politician sees our occupation as more black members added in the universal race struggle. Our minister sees it as a fulfillment in an idiotic biblical prophecy for the same cause. Both are very wrong. Now you can understand, Marta interjected, why it is necessary for us to study you at despite study you as organs and not as a race. religious sect, or group. Despite your obvious scientific advancements, Dr. Cooter smugly interjected, you Martians are extremely naive. All of us here, he made a sweeping gesture of the table, all fighting a common cause all over the world. When your Martians arrive, even as conquerors, you will be a part of the black man, the Negro. We will have a solution, therefore we occupy your planet Earth, said Martuk. This is why we are making our studies of you now. Your Earth must be advanced. We shall make many changes. We will not come as a race or a nation. We will teach you to function as we do on our planet as organs, dependent organs, relying on each other to service and the, those are the very words of the Master, Reverend Kelly shouted. Call it what you will, but those are our Jesus teachings. We didn't say organs, but I take it your reference are to Jesus Christ, inquired Marta. We know of him only he was about 20,000 years ahead of his time in his development. He was a contemporary of our Martian master, Civili. We are told that your Christ was the only earthling to ever contact our Civili. He did it from a wilderness some centuries back through means of spiritual telepathy, Marta said. That's some form of metaphysics, isn't it? Asked Dr. Cuter. It is somewhat, said Marta, but none other of you have since reached a state of development whereby you might communicate with our master, Civili. You mean, I asked, if we are ever to communicate with your Civili, we will then have reached the highest form of some ideal development? Exactly, Professor. When you, as organs, will have developed to the state of civilized communication, no longer will you find it necessary to band together as nations, groups, or even families. But that is impossible. Such institutions are the backbone, the foundations of man's existence. Dr. Cooter scoffed. I must say, Martuk droned, you six are the most interesting species of infantilis and ancient ticks that we've discovered yet. Infantiles? What? Miss Bird sounded shocked. Infantile ancient ticks. It is our classification of your ebony origin due to your retarded progress and development towards civilized communication. There are white people just as bad, defended Reverend Kelly. That is no news to us, Reverend Kelly, Marty told him. We have considered that too. Then I doubt you have ever realized the immense progress made by our darker people, shouted Attorney C, jumping up from his chair. We are ebony origin. We made strides against all odds, fighting the oppression. Please sit down, Counselor, Martuk sounded commanding. I'm so sorry. We do not see it as progress. The only yardstick or barometer your people have employed to measure what you term as progress is the attainments of the so-called white man. This is why we now classify you infantilis ancientix. Then, as you see it, I ask, we darker people have not elected any worthwhile aim or end except catching up with the white people. That seems to be the only aim of your black kind. Obviously, your leaders have not evaluated the ways of the white man as to whether his procedures are worthy or progressive. You have just accepted them instead of seeking goals of your own. Well, if the white man has not progressed and the black man is so far behind, why do you Martians care to come and occupy our planet? Miss Birch asked. A good question, droned Marta. Your Earth scientists are making attempts to contact, even reach our planet Mars. In your retarded state of civilized development, your next step would to be occupy or even conquer us, then attempt to force upon us your savage and social disorders. Even now, your attempts to reach our satellite are executed on a national scale, not as an all-out planetary gesture or effort. Each nation in competition racing to see which can reach our Mars first. There are many untapped natural resources on your planet, Earth. Many of them we can use, but we would have to trade, negotiate with you as nations, not as a unified planet. If we offer any of your Earth nations our knowledge and scientific skills in exchange for your resources, then that nation will not only use that knowledge and skill to conquer and make war with the rest of the world. You would eventually turn to make war and conquer as us Martians. Thus, we find it expedient to eventually occupy your planet. That is all very good, the attorney told him. But what if we try to resist your coming here and conquering us? It would be a futile gesture and a foolish one. You possess nothing to resist us with but your attitudes and childish conceptions. Why, there are only a few of you who admit the possibility or existence, even the presence of our flying saucers, as you call them. However, Martyr added, we shall not occupy your earth until we have found ways to advance your civilized development. This accounts for our present expedition to gather more information. To occupy your planet in this undeveloped civilized state, Martuk laughed in his drone. You wouldn't be worth the trouble, only a liability to us. Well, what is it you seek to gain from us, the six of us here, I mean? Miss Birch decided to speak again. Only to study your very reaction to your irrational social complexes. Then we can classify you as organs and make necessary deductions. Martuk was serious now. Then why don't you talk to us individually? Added Miss Birch. We all here share the same feelings. That would give us no reliable organistic reaction. Even though all of you might be banded together in a common cause, each of you as organs react different on pursuance of this cause, and for different personal or organistic reasons. This is always true of the infantilis ancientis. You have developed no real organistic reaction, but you rather rely on animalistic law, survival of self, or varied forms of social and biological emulation of the conduct and behavior of your recognized and accepted peers. Now you surely don't mean to imply that none of us are truly dedicated to the betterment of our Negro people. I can definitely say that my life has been wholly devoted at all times to the Miss Birch. Martha stopped her again. Wearily, we are about to show you how much we have already learned of your personal dedication to your cause, as you put it. He indicated the large panel screen behind him. This innovation is called a recordoscope. We find it invaluable in checking the true organistic reaction. Now, in your own personal case, please observe. He nodded to Marta, who slid a panel from the top of his side of the table, exposing a number of knobs and dials. The next few numbers he spent turning and adjusting the dials. The huge glass panel screen behind them began to glow, slowly, not unlike a television set. A picture, the face of a man, began materializing. Marta twisted another dial, and the face focused clearer. Miss Birch gasped in recognition. I also recognized the very familiar face of the white man, Senator Martin Case Rabbit, anti-Negro politician in Miss Birch's native state. The white man's image was talking. Marta adjusted the sound and volumes, and the picture was speaking. Now, she knew I owned most of them slums, so when I get ready to sell them for federal housing projects under a national program for urban renewal, that's when that nigger bitch started hollering in her damn colored newspaper. She starts writing more editorials telling them darkies about how I was forcing them out of their lovely homes and all. Then she comes to see me. We makes an agreement, she and me, that she would stop writing all of them damn editorials in her darky paper about me putting Negroes out of their homes, and I would get her that 2-year advertising contract with the Good Brew Beer Company for her little rag sheet of a paper. I did, and she stopped it. Then she went to writing editorials telling her folks that they ought to have some race pride and be happy that I was clearing up them slums for 'em getting some good housing projects, and how they ought to give me some votes and come the next election. And then colored people eat that up. I can't understand. But I got elected to Congress on it with the nigger votes. Miss Birch uncrumpled a wasted Kleenex and loudly blew her nose. Martuk nodded to his assistant, who twisted the dials and talked face disappeared from the screen. You see, Miss Birch, we are quite aware and informed. Just a minute, Larstein sprang from his chair. There's nothing illegal about transaction. For the Negro to survive, he must fight the white man with his own methods. Why this wonderful woman? Manny's off. I could not help but shout out, erecting a momentary silence which stilled, even chilled the cool room. Thank you, Professor. Montague droned in my direction, really smiling. I noticed for the first time. I believe the football crowds used to utter the cry when our illustrious attorney once ran for the college football touchdown scores. Am I correct? I grinned but bowed my head sheepishly under the withering glances from the other 5 seated around me. The attorney continued his speech. This woman can stand her record as a champion of her people. Say what you will, but it is expedient that dealing with the white politician to employ his own subterfuge. This I know from experience. I lived down south. I practiced there till they drove me away from out of the state. We are a little puzzled about that too, counselor. We'd like your organistic reaction as to the other version of how and why you left the South. Martuk nodded once again to Marta, who immediately busied himself with twisting the dials. The face of another white man materialized, preluding a twangy nasal voice with thick, deep South accent. Now, after finishing school up north, this nigger boy Manny Seaton came back to practice law. I remember his last case down here. He was representing a colored boy that stabbed old Tobacco John to death. Everybody here know Tobacco John was real mean on niggers. Right there at our county fair, fronting more than 1,000 witnesses. He was stomping down on this here colored boy, had hit him on the ground, kicking him. Then the nigger boy up and pulls his switchblade right the spotting carves of Tobacco John's to death. Seaton had an open shut case of self-defense for this boy. I was the district attorney at the time. I tell Seaton he want him to win this case and get his nigger off scot-free so we could show them Yankee bastards we got justice down south and here for colored too. But Seaton comes in and loses the case. He comes into court without a single damn witness for this boy. It appeared that this boy didn't have no cash money, we learned later, but he was a war veteran. So he signed Seaton as beneficiary to his GI insurance policy for Seaton to defend him. I tell Seaton after the trial to appeal the case, but he never did, and the boy got the chair. So Seaton collects $10,000 on the veteran's insurance and leaves time. Next thing I know, I read them in colored papers. We Seaton is up north telling the urban care of nonviolent Christian people about white injustice down south and how he got run out. Ain't that a bitch? Them folks all over believes him too. It's a damn slanderous lie. All of it. The Lord was standing, his face livid with anger, blustering indignance. Sit down, counselor. Martuk's drone was calm. I refuse to be intimidated with lies of foul-mouthed southern cracker. Sit down. The drone was sharpened this time. He nodded to Marta, who with his dial manipulations caused the picture to fade. But don't you see? It was the congressman on his feet talking now. They want to discredit this man because of his unrealistic fight for Negro rights. You can't believe anything they say. In that case, we happen to know better, Congressman, Marta replied. But our interest is the organistic reaction more than what might be called a lie and what might be considered the truth among you. I had been enjoying the whole thing. I even wondered if the Martians had anything on the recordoscope about me. I felt sure that I'd enjoy seeing it. I began wondering if they intended to show mine. Is it all right to smoke in here? I raised my pipe to the Martian. By all means, Marta droned. Please make yourselves as comfortable as possible under the conditions. He then turned to Marta. Their drowning conversation was inaudible to the rest of us in the room. The congressmen withdrew their hastily unwrapped and cellophane from a long cigar and bit off the end. Attorney Seaton pulled a crumpled package of Pall Mall cigarettes from his pocket and offered one to Miss Birch and Reverend Kelly, who refused them. I snapped my noisy lighter and sucked the flame to my pipe by turning the bowl upside down, then turned my attention back toward the Martians who had seemingly completed their private conference. Marta addressed the six of us again. I reiterate, we are not so interested in your group and class conflicts as we are in your organistic reactions to them. We are here only for information. If the procedure makes any of you uncomfortable, our apologies. We will not, however, keep you much longer. He then turned to Martuk, who began speaking. In your struggle for black man recognition, we find there are two different solutions offered to attain this end. Some of you are advocating complete integration, as you call it, in all aspects of Caucasian life, meaning that all organs be free to, to partake, mix socially, and mingle at the discretion of the organ. Others say you simply want equal opportunity for black organs as well as whites. In other words, separate but equal, which is the right solution. Only prejudiced whites and cowardly Negroes advocate the latter, Dr. Cooter cried. You agree, don't you, Attorney C? Bedfellows and bullcorn, I said aloud to myself. Obviously that they heard me. They must think they are addressing one of those UCNCP rallies today. An interesting reaction, Professor, Marta addressed me. I suppose you detect a fallacy in their arguments. They themselves are the fallacies, and they don't have any arguments. They practice one thing and preach another. I stood and shouted in disgust. They have to keep confusion going because without the struggle, neither of them here would even amount to a tinker's dam. And just where do you stand in all this, Professor? Miss Birch's voice was sarcastic. I'm a confessed failure, Miss Birch, I answered curtly, because I can't exploit the damn race struggle for my personal gain and enhancement as a few other people I know around here. Now, just a minute, Reverend Kelly's voice re- reverberated around the rooms. Your accusations are preposterous. Oh, shut up, I accuse you, then that's just what I mean. Are we to assume you can cite proof of substantiate your statements, Marta inquired. You're darn right I can. Let's begin with our educator here, Dr. Cooter. Claims he's all out for integration, but if any member of our college faculty advocates that in classrooms, or joins any community movement to bring integration about, he gets fired on the spot. Well, why is this? Asked Martuk. If it came about, it would mean the end of his institution, and definitely his position as a college president of any kind. That's ridiculous, cried Dr. Cooter. Not nearly as ridiculous as the preserved foods and sugar-cured hams you have your students of agriculture and husbandry prepare as gifts to present your state governor and members of his legislature at Thanksgiving and Christmas. That is what we consider an economic means of public relations, Dr. Cooter stated. Then what about your trips to the state capitol telling them to enlarge your school? And this would mollify a civil rights argument for integrated racial education. The institution always needs these physical additions, Dr. Cooter said, whether segregation is ended or not. Oh, come off it. You even have the legislature reduce the tuition to encourage more colored students to increase your athletic allowances for big track, football, basketball, and baseball teams and fancy military bands. Then you send them pictures publicizing showing Negroes very happy in the segregated schools where you play God. But can't the white legislators see through these schemes? Inquired Marta. They don't care. They don't pay for it. Then, besides, every time they build him an extension, it means more profit. The members of his legislature own the brickyards, the steel, and the construction companies that build the extensions. I told him. Why is it, young man? The congressman stopped me. You have not repeated these things to these people. This is America. Listen, Congressman, I have lost my first 4 teaching jobs just telling as much to students in my classes. I was growing heated, angry, and recalling, you know damn well Miss Birch's paper wouldn't print it either. Then why when you bring such things out about Then why, when you bring such things out before our UCNCP? Reverend Kelly shouted. Our organization is dedicated. I know it's dedication, Reverend. You know I do. It was a good idea once, but lately some of the people. Then why don't you join in with us and straighten it out? Reverend Kelly was steaming. Reverend Kelly, I turned and spoke slowly and deliberately. For your information, I was a member. I was kicked out, dismissed because I questioned an UCNCP branch in my own town whose officers had spent over $20,000 for stamps and incidentals in one city alone. I asked for an accounting and got dismissed, kicked out. The minister turned to the Martian. This man had become a cynic, a critic due to his own personal failures. I am sorry for him. He has enlarged a few insignificant truths in magnitudinous proportions to compensate for his own failures in life. If you allow Reverend Kelly here to answer a few questions, I turn back and address the Martians. I can show where he hides under a cloak of deceit for personal gains in the UCNCP. I am not attacking the organization nor its not aims, but people like him. You will answer his questions, Martuk told the minister. I told the minister, you headed a UCNCP committee years back, a committee seeking better roles for Negroes in our entertainment media. Am I correct? The entire nation knew of our efforts and progress in Hollywood and New York, Reverend Kelly boasted. Excuse me, this committee was formed for what purpose? Martin leaned forward. We formed this committee to encourage directors and producers in the entertainment field to exhibit a better or more representative type of Negro character image in their film and stage shows. We employed protest marches and boycotts to enforce their compliance. I must add, we were generally effective with the help of our Negro press. He smiled in Miss Birch's direction. She returned the smile. You also succeeded in eliminating a great deal of work for our Negro performers with this effectiveness, I reminded him. In the cause of the progress, someone must suffer. The minister sounded piously defensive. Now, isn't it true, I spoke again steadily, that you later called on these very same producers and offered your personal services at about $20,000 a year to quell any such threats of future boycotts by the UCNCP? No, the minister shouted. I offered to work with them in the adversary capacity to read, comment on, and approve the Negro roles and scripts. Naturally, we expected the compensation for these services. Even though you had no previous training or background in professional theater media, I had started enjoying myself again. The truth was, you offered yourself for sale to approve anything they wanted to produce as long as the price was right. But what happened to this committee? Martuk asked. Is it still functioning? No, it does not, answered Reverend Kelly. The money-mad, prejudiced New York and Hollywood producers elected to eliminate as many Negroes from scripts as possible rather than picture the Negro in a better light. You mean most of the producers elected not to be dictated to by a group of insincere petty grafters? I added snappily. Now, just a minute, the congressman jumped, roaring to his feet now. I was chairman of the Eastern branch of that committee. I'm glad you brought that up, Congressman, I turned, explaining to the Martian. I didn't mention before this committee didn't just restrict its activities to entertainment media. We scrutinized every aspect of the nation's cultural mediums that might harmfully affect the status of the Negro, the congressman ventured. By that, you mean dance, music, drama, art, all literature? Martyr asked. The congressman assured him that this was exactly what he had meant. He went on to explain that in music, sometimes a white producer wanted a Negro to sing only Negro spirituals. The committee would intercede, prevailing on the producer to permit the artist to vary the repertoire. The same thing applied for a Negro singing the blues. We wanted public audience to become fully aware that Negroes were not to be typed, the congressman explained. Tell them how you approach the field of literature, I chided the lawmaker on. After one nasty, icy look in my direction, the congressman continued, "We cataloged all articles and books which depicted unattractive aspects of our people and prevailed upon Negroes not to purchase them. The Brown Dispatch, Miss Birch's newspaper, gave us full support by printing the list for readers and editorially protecting the contents of them. I bet you never tried to boycott the Brown Dispatch for any unrepresentative articles about Negroes," I challenged him. Miss Birch almost screamed. "Any writings in my paper concerning the unattractive aspects of our people were to shame them into improving and doing better, not to degrade them by any means." I studied the woman momentarily and slowly shook my head. "Tell me, Congressman, wasn't it your committee that denounced a book written by a white woman named Carrie Lipscomb a few years back?" I faced him across the table. "We certainly did." He turned to address the Martian. "This book was called Hollow Ground. It fictionalized an impossible, disgusting love affair between an educated colored girl and a depraved, crippled southern white man. The girl was supposed to be a graduate of one of our finest finishing schools for Negro women, and you felt this as an objectionable commentary upon the educated class of our Negro people?" Martuk inquired. "Most objectionable, and contrived as a racial insult. I said so to the both white and Negro press, but your noise stopped. I capped from my seat. When theatrical producers elected to cast your niece to portray this very role in the stage version of this book." Silence prevailed as all the Negroes once again stared at me antagonistically. I shifted in my chair uneasily. "You mean," Marta broke the silence, droning, "you permitted your own niece to portray this very same role in the stage version of this book?" The congressman wilted. "Please understand, my niece is a grown woman. She does not always share my views. That could be applied to many other people you claim to represent and speak for through your UCNCP," I concluded. Reverend Kelly stood again, appraising me. The time we come, sir, you will remember and regret this fiasco." Unconsciously, my hand went up to finger the scar above my eyebrow. I knew well the minister's potential for getting revenge. "I've regretted quite a few fiascos involving you, Reverend, ever since our football game back in '39, but I can't compromise as you did in that Southern City Park case." The minister flinched almost imperceptibly. Then I knew that I struck a sensitive chord. "What case did you refer to, Professor?" Martuk leaned forward. I went on and explained that I had referred to a UCNCP campaign for Negroes to obtain privileges and use of the municipal park recreational facilities of a southern city. "Were they successful?" Marta seemed actually interested. "They should have been, but their leaders elected to fatten their purses. The two of them, along with the lovely Miss Birch here, elected to sell the people out." Consternation ran among the five of them. All of them called the variations of a liar, employing a variety of terms spiced with a few choice epithets regarding my mother and ancestry. Both Marta and his co-worker had leaned forward, actually elated, their eyes bright wide and their tight lips loosened, stretched across their ebony face like bands of elastic. Such interesting reactions. Please, Professor Taylor, continue this story of the park and the sellout. "Oh, Lawyer Sidney was brilliant in the courtroom," I went on. "The judge gave the opposing white city attorney just 6 weeks to make provisions for equal Negro piece of the city parks recreational facilities. But the case never got back into court, and the black folks never got equality and park privileges either." "But what did happen? Do you know what happened?" Martuk could hardly stand the suspense. He jiggled a bit. "Just 2 weeks later," I raised my fingers to indicate Just 2 weeks, and the Brown Dispatch carried headlines announcing a big UCNCP victory. Negroes were granted use of only 3 of the park's facilities: golf course, tennis courts, and picnic ground, but only 2 days. I used my fingers again of each week. Among other things, yes, it's funny none of the city's Negroes were told about the 2 days and 3 facilities until after your committee had accepted them. They thought you were fighting for completely integrated facilities. That's what you told them when you asked for their support and their money. Such a charge is completely outrageous, Miss Birch pretended indignation. No more outrageous, Miss Birch, than the state attorney of that local serving a subpoena to see your UCNCP books. Just 1 year later, I snapped. They subpoenaed our books in order to collect names and subject our members to an economic boycott, shouted Attorney C. That's what you told the poor, trusted colored people of your city. You let them outlaw the city's UCNCP chapter rather than surrender those books. I raised my eyebrows. Now you have no legal organization there at all, do you, counselor? Reverend Kelly was breathing hard. You're inferring that we had something to hide? I am almost certain of it, no matter what you say. That white state attorney knew he had you. Those books would have proved it. Those books would have told who got the payoff. I then sat down abruptly and stared into the shiny oval ceiling above me. The room's silence was heavier than ever before. Motuk began droning, telling us that very soon he would allow everyone in the room to return to their respective pursuits. Marta said that before dismissing everyone, he had one more question. Everyone turned his eyes and attention to the platform and waited anxiously. The final question from the Martian. Tell me, in your quest for Negro integration into the Caucasian social order, do you seek the goal of complete absorption with loss of identity among the race of white people, and we Martians arrived establishing a superior black society? Would you join us and reject integration? None ventured an answer, except for myself. I knew all of them, each of them, would never give the Martians a true answer. I smiled. I doubted they had ever considered that kind of question before. If they had an answer to the question, well, I knew they would never tell it to the Martians or anyone. No answer, no reaction, Marta queried pleasantly. Then we have no further questions. He nodded to the Martians beside him. We will now permit you to return to your respective pursuits. As Marta spoke, his assistant was stepping down from the platform and heading to the invincible door. It had now sprung open. All of your reactions have helped us immensely. Please follow Marta. We will arrange for your return. Expeditiously, Dr. Cuda moved in behind Marta, respectively in a light manner. Following him was Congressman Reverend Kelly and Attorney C. None but my poor self remembered the courtesy of allowing Miss Birch to precede him. This I did with a playful bow and flourish. She tried to smile into my face, hurried past me to join the others, tugging at their girdle as she moved. Professor Taylor, I paused at the drone of my name. The others did not return. The others did not turn, and the door closed notably behind Miss Birch. Marta was coming forward, unfolding a large sheet of gossamer-looking fabric. He moved swiftly, nimbly, allowing the sheet to unfold its entire length. As he came forward and sliding stealthily toward me, I twisted and tried to dodge away. Deftly, with both hands, Marta tossed the material into the air, spreading it above my head and shoulders. It drifted down, enmeshing my shoulders and tangling about my body, arms, and legs. I jerked frantically, then tore fruitfully to free myself of the mesh. The next few minutes I spent struggling, frightened with dismay, while the black-faced Martian observed with mocking amusement, their down-tight lips smirked across their satin-black faces. Perspiration trickled down my hairline, my forehead, down my neck, onto my chest, wormed its way down the center crevices of my back. Finally, weakened, nauseous, and exhausted, I subsided, sank to the floor, struggling feebly to dismantle myself. I gazed to final plea for mercy into Martian's placid, angle-shaped visage. expecting a coup de grace and found it below, but none came, and I then drifted into darkness, surrender, total oblivion, like sleep. The steady, cool draft of air questioned my consciousness, but left me mindless as to how long I had been there. Judging the air draft, I surmised or imagined that the door was once again open, and that the other Martians were coming into, or perhaps departing from the room. I wanted to speak or cry out, but I remained motionless, speaking that my black captors were probably watching. I lay still, pretending numbness to the cool pellets of water that were now spraying steadily across my forehead, my face, and eyes. I guess probably the Martians were trying to revive me, for the pellets of water were spraying heavier now, almost drenching my entire body. With a cat-like facility, I peered through slit eyes at the ceiling of the room above me, recognizing it. But it was not the ceiling of the Martian ship. It belonged to my quarters, my own bedroom, the faculty dorm of Kildrew Colored College. I was aboard no spaceship and could see no more black-faced spaceman from Mars. Through the open doors, a fanning wind billowed the curtains and lashed gusts of cold rain across my face and into my pillow. I raised myself, shook my head, and turned to avoid the fury of the rain shower. Untangling my body from the twisted mass of bed covers, I then swung my feet onto the floor and quickly moved to the windows, closing them and shutting out the truly wind and waters of the rainstorm. I stood there watching the water torrentially assault the glass pane before joining the rivulets and streams already coursing to the sill of the window. My mind was lost in a series of recapitulations: the Martians, the ship, the other five, or was it a dream? It seemed so real, so real. I remained at the window, still cogitating, watching the rain. When I saw it, off into the rain, darkened skies, I saw it. The luminous, saucer-shaped object was rising swiftly, moving peacefully, gracefully, fading off into the cloudy heavens. Lightning flashed and momentarily blurring my view. Then the ship was gone. Who ever believed me if I told this? Who would believe a nigger who said that the Martians were an advanced race of black kind people?